Hello everyone. I welcome you to another learning workshops. Our title for today is Difficult Conversation. This very idea, I found it through a recent case study, in fact, a real life coaching assignment I was working on, and my own personal experience. And I thought of creating this workshop to help most of us really caught up in difficult situations because of the difficult conversations we lack the real ability to deal with it. So let's get started. You could, as always, grab a pen and a paper and work along with me. And we will learn this through a real life case study. So here is Ajay and Mr. H. Mr. H, I just named him Mr. H because I really do not know the real name of this person. Ajay is my client. And Mr. H is Ajay's boss. In our workshop today, we will learn about a very typical and a very quite common situation at a day-to-day workspace, which Mr. Ajay and Mr. H is currently dealing with. They both are working in a multinational corporation. Each of them are very good individually as people, good-hearted, not really very sly, mean, or political. However, their working style has a huge difference. Along with this, Mr. H comes in from a different region of India and Ajay from another region. This creates a cultural divide between the two. And as you all know, our communication is predominantly, it stems from our culture. And this is the reason why they both, Mr. H as Ajay's supervisor and Ajay working along with Mr. H, find themselves in situations where they think there's a lot of miscommunication being built in between the two because of the lack of communication skills, which often turns their conversation into a difficult one. Now, this thing actually started when Ajay was working with me on a coaching assignment, and I had asked Ajay, we were actually working on something else. But when I found that Ajay was not really to the energy and motivation that he would usually bring to the session, he was not really himself. And I asked Ajay what basically was the reason. Why was he, kind of so, I would say rather so full of stress, anxiety, and worry? These were my questions to him because the assignments were delayed not once, twice, but a lot of time. And asking these questions, Ajay sounded very worried and tensed. And when I probed further, he explained to me the difficult time he's having with Mr. H, his boss. And even though we were not working on this particular aspect, he was so stressed and tensed and full of anxiety that he was hardly giving any time to the work we were doing together. And Mr. H was actually not totally responsible for it. At the same time, they both working together on a very complex project and on a single team. It was also difficult to work without Mr. H. So, which means there was something more to what I could really understand, and Ajay couldn't really completely understand. So I asked Ajay, okay, Ajay, let's pause the work we are doing here and let me first help you get out of this vicious circle of stress and worry you are in that's stopping you from even working on a coaching thing. And on probing, I learned that their working style is not only different, the communication skill was the main reason that they both were finding themselves into a difficult conversation on account of a lot of misunderstanding between the two. So I gave Ajay a method, and that's exactly what I'm going to teach you here today. So if you're ready to do the work, grab a pen and a paper. It's very simple. If you find yourself in similar situation like that of Ajay, you might as well use this technique. I called it the 3-step method for difficult conversations. And this is recall, replay, and rehearse. So when I was working with Ajay, I asked him, I in fact kept aside all the assignments that I gave him and I gave him a new one which was related to this. And I told him that first step was to recall. I asked him to recall every bit of a conversation that he had with Mr. H few days ago, which was keeping him awake at night. What really, where it all started. What was he saying? How did Ajay reply? What really was the main content, word to word, verbatim, and asked him to write that down. After that, the step 2 is the replay. And I then asked him to replay the scenario right before me. In fact, I even asked him to record in his own voice the conversation that was keeping him awake at night. So the replay is not just the replay of what really happened at that time, but to give it a shape, either in a voice recording or writing it in text, whichever way is convenient for you. And for Ajay, he was more convenient with the audio part. So I said, okay, go ahead, record, replay, tell me, how was your conversation? And then rehearse. Now this one was, basis on the replay, we found a lot of things. In fact, not just I would say, when I say we, it's me and Ajay both. And Ajay was surprised at some of the things he kind of skipped or missed while he was deeply into that conflicting conversation with Mr. H, his boss. And what we really learned was Ajay coming in from a different region. And there were a few other things, like as I mentioned earlier, he was working with me on a different issue for his coaching. This bit of a stress and frustration, he carried it also into his conversation with Mr. H, that was his boss. And Mr. H, coming in from another region, another culture, and both of them with different working styles, was not really accustomed or used to this frustrated tone in his voice that Ajay was carrying every day to work. And when things went into a debate mode, which we often do when we are discussing various options, Ajay went a bit more stronger in his pitch and tone. Now, friends, you must be thinking that, do we really need to pay so much attention to this? Isn't this a very trivial matter? But let me tell you, communication plays a very vital role, specifically in our career, and very often, not just in our career or for that matter anybody. Communication has a power that it can start a war and even can stop it. That's the power of it. And in this case, Ajay meant nothing wrong with Mr. H, but the frustration and stress that he carried on because of some other issues that were running in his head it subconsciously, the energy he brought to the table, to his work, to his day-to-day behavior, which included his body language, his tone, his voice, the pitch, was reflecting of his inner state. And when I asked him to replay and really record his voice the way he spoke, exactly as he spoke, when he really heard it back, his own voice, he could very easily figure out that he was hyper. His voice carried that traces of frustration, his anger, as if he's stressing a lot on every time he want to point or emphasize on a certain point, which perhaps could put off anyone for that matter. But Mr. H was a graceful leader. He may not immediately react, but he could sense all of this and quite didn't appreciate it. But at the same time, his response became more and more aloof and cold, which again, Ajay was in a cycle where he felt he was not being appreciated. So this went back and forth. So when Ajay really wrote this down and recorded it in a audio piece, and literally I asked him to listen to his own voice, he was he got to learn. It's like you get to learn your own. It's like a blind spot that just opened up before him. This new awareness brought to him a lot of insights, because when we speak, we assume that people really understand things as we are speaking. And Ajay's constant worry was he just spoke to the point, he was correct, he presented facts. He was unaware that all of that he was doing was correct, but the way he was doing it was making all the difference. And then when I gave him the step 3, which was to rehearse, repeat, change, and repeat, meaning I asked him, where can you bring those changes? You need to rehearse that because you're bringing those changes. So he said in the tone of his voice. And then again repeat it, meaning he approached now specifically when he enters in a conversation with Mr. H. Be more mindful of the tone and pitch, which came as an emerging pattern every time he heard back his conversations, his audio, his own voice record. Uh, that was a main area where he needs to do that correction. And every time he changed that, mellowed down a bit, and was more mindful when he spoke the next time, he was amazed at the way the entire equation with Mr. H has changed. A 3-step method, recall, replay, rehearse, made a huge difference in the life of not just Mr. H, his boss, but even for Ajay, where he was unnecessarily getting himself into trouble for no fault of his, except for a blind spot on his pitch that he was unaware of. Friends, in communication skills, our tone play a very important role. We don't really have to be a professional speaker or a singer, but how we really, the way we speak, it it kind of speaks volume about our own awareness, and also it manifests our inner state. So if you ever find yourself in similar situations just like Ajay or Mr. H, just you could use this 3-step method, or otherwise just pay attention to the tone of your voice. If you are directly dealing with issues related to communication skills, be it with your spouse, with your loved ones, or at workspace, maybe a minor change here can completely change your equation and can help you find what you really, get you out of that circle of difficult conversations, conflicts, and the stress, similarly to the way Ajay was. Present day today, Mr. H and Ajay shares a wonderful equation. In fact, the last what I've heard of Ajay was he was being chosen for a very pivotal role, which may fast track his career. And this is all because of Mr. H, who was well aware of his potential, but perhaps this was one area which was keeping Ajay from moving forward and fully realizing his potential. So use these steps, friends, if in case you find yourself in a similar situations. And for more help, I shall share the link in the description box where you can connect with me so that I could also help you in the way I helped assisted Ajay. That's all for today. Thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you.